Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. It's February 2nd, 2025. And our topic this morning is letting go of separation. So we're talking about radical interconnection with everything, us and everything, and also then how to let go and find the wonder in emptiness.
Hmm, that's beautiful. And it would seem to be a contradiction.
It would, but we know that we teach that for meditation. You know that what you do in meditation is try to still your monkey mind, your constant thinking, planning, and that we know that when you manage to do that, what we experience is bliss.
Mhm.
So it seems counterintuitive.
Well, I think our fear is that when we let go of everything, we will have nothing. What we don't realize is when we let go of everything, the nothingness that we think we're going to have is full of something. The best example I can think of that is if you look at the night sky when there's no lights. Imagine all the lights are all the thinking that we do on a daily basis. And if we look up in the sky while we're doing that kind of thinking, it's too bright to see the stars.
Mm,
You go to Wyoming or Montana and you go out, get out of the car
mm.
or whatever, and look up and you say,
At night.
there
Mm.
is actually no space that isn't full. It is like a light show. I think there's a consciousness light show that's available to us that we don't realize is available to us because we're so busy keeping our own personal lights on and we don't think about it. In fact, I think we actually become afraid of the dark when there actually is no dark.
True.
You've got a
It's
wonderful
true.
quote that I'd love for you to share, and we're actually our,
Well, well,
our talk is going to be based pretty much or a lot on that. It's the
I know you want to do the Ram Dass one.
yeah,
But I want to start with a definition of God.
yeah, I like that.
Ernest Holmes says the highest God, which we tend to think of as, above, and the innermost God is one God. So that's, what he's saying is there, we don't have to look outside to find God, to talk to God. We don't have to pray to a God outside of us, but to know that it lies within us. Also, we cannot be separated from it.
Well, I'm glad you're starting here. That's a really good place to start. And it's so true. In the Seth materials, he talks about there being uh, who we think we are. And then he says, beneath that, there is a source self, that we go
Mhm.
into the source of our own being. And it is the source self that is connected with the infinite.
Mhm.
And so it's counterintuitive. We think in order to connect with God, we need to go out, when in fact we need to go in.
Mhm. Mhm. And what we're most afraid of, I think, is not being able to connect with God. And yet, we're inseparable. We're really inseparable. Ernest also says in Creative Mind, he says, we have within us a power that is greater than anything we shall ever connect in the outer, a power that can overcome every obstacle in our life and set us safe and at peace in a new light and a new life.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes. And what amazes me, and if you haven't read Ernest Holmes, for those of you that may be joining us that are not familiar with this teaching, his efficiency and elegance is something to behold.
Mhm.
The way he handles words. I want to move into a slightly different metaphor, but it's actually a practice for me. As most of you know, I'm an artist, and I was thinking about how I create art. I have a very specific intention. I have a definite amount of discipline. I have a certain quality, I think, a amount of mastery over the medium that I'm working in. So mastery, discipline, and intention are really, really important. However, those three things do not create art. How the art occurs, and I think this is it's the same as what growing spiritually is. You have an intention, you have a goal, you bring together all of your tools, you head in the direction, and then you allow that which shows up to guide you and to reveal itself. And I think
To
that's hard
reveal
to do.
itself, yeah.
And what often happens when I'm creating art is not very much that's very good. And so the tendency is to say, I need to work harder. at making something rather than I need to allow something that wants to be made to occur. And so you become both the initiator, the creator, and the observer. If we can do that, if we can become the observer of the condition that we're in and not have to change it, but allow it to unfold, we have a very different perspective. And I'm reminded of Rumi when he says, I don't remember the quote, it's such a beautiful quote though, about meeting you out in the field.
It
He
says,
doesn't,
out beyond ideas
of
of
right and
right doing and wrongdoing,
wrongdoing,
there is a field.
I'll meet you there.
I'll meet you there.
And he didn't say, and dress well for it, bring your Tesla or your Porsche. Make sure that you have the right vocabulary and the right academic credentials. He just said, I'll meet you in the field. And the wonderful thing and the beautiful thing about the field, he says, I'll meet you in nature where nature occurs, where that which you could not possibly understand or have created is alive and well and growing and can teach you. That's powerful stuff from where I'm sitting.
Well, and so is meditation.
Well,
At
that's
first,
exactly what it is. Yeah.
yeah, at first it seems to be so boring to try to
Mhm.
sit and not have any thoughts. It seems boring and pointless because we enjoy our thoughts and we love hearing our thoughts.
Well,
But it's when we manage to let that go that we can hear guidance, we can
yeah.
hear inspiration, we get better ideas than we would think ourselves, and it's a joy. It's a joy to be able to quiet our mind, to quiet our thinking. But it seems like death, sort of,
Well, and I think behind the scenes for a lot of us, a lot of the time, even if we don't know it, there is this huge elephant in the room called not enoughness.
Mm.
I am not enough. And so part of what we do to
Mhm.
defend against not enoughness is to surround ourselves with enough thinking, enough money, enough stuff, enough security, enough safety, enough
Enough
food.
busyness.
Yeah, we have a storage unit which we need to empty because we have enough, but not necessarily enough. We can't let it go. And so this not enoughness, and I can't think of the comedian who does a wonderful,
George Carlin
George Carlin does a wonderful thing about wherever you go, you take your stuff,
stuff.
and you got to have your stuff. And he's really onto something because without my stuff, what would I do? What would I be? And the truth is, you spend a lot more time carrying your stuff around than you do carrying around the consciousness that would allow you to discover the stuff of nature, the stuff of life. But I think it's important for us to pay attention to this not enoughness because it intrudes into our spiritual being and our wholeness of being. If I'm going to meditate, uh, one of the things that can get in the way is I need for this meditation to be enough. I need for it to be a good meditation
Mm.
because if it's not, if it's an empty one, then it wasn't a good one, and if it wasn't a good one, it wasn't enough. And so it's often trailing. It reminds me of the commercial about emphysema where they have the little dragon that follows the person around all the time. He's bouncing around in the car and trying to get rid of the dragon. It's a friendly looking dragon. It's actually quite nice, and he waves goodbye to it. But it's nevertheless takes up a lot of his space. It takes up a lot of his life. And this dragon that I think is called not enoughness is pleasant enough and often offers us enough false security that we make sure to take it with us wherever we go.
So then we make sure that we're busy all the time, we're constructive, we're doing things, we're achieving things. And that's why it's so hard to just stop all that, which we need to do to
Yeah.
experience the ecstasy that we find, which I'm going to read to you of a quote from Ram Dass. And this is from his book, Being Ram Dass. And I think most of you know that Ram Dass was a professor at Harvard
Yeah.
who of psychology who ended up going to India and
Right.
studying.
And from time to time use LSD and marijuana. But
Well, that was at Harvard. I don't think he did that in India. There,
okay.
he found true
Okay.
ecstasy. But at any rate, he says, the vastness of emptiness is completely full of love. To
Except
be here now,
that is so incredible. Think
yeah,
about that. The vastness, go ahead, say that again,
of
of
emptiness
emptiness.
is completely full of love.
It's the field.
Yeah, it's the field. To be here now in this vastness, I have to let go of the desires and expectations, plural, that keep me time bound.
I'll stop right there. Imagine the monkey reaching through the cage, holding on to a banana, and he refuses to let go because he doesn't want to not have the banana, but he also is trapped. He's trapped by the very thing he's holding on to, and he doesn't know it because he's got this thing that he really wants.
Letting go allows the self of everyday experience, my ego, my thinking mind, to merge with my higher self, my true nature. To merge with the beloved, I have to let go of my experiences. That's how this jumble of my thoughts and sensations and emotions is forged into one in the fire of love.
That's beautiful. In the fire of love. Now, that's an interesting metaphor in and of itself because what does a fire do?
It burns things up.
Mhm. Yeah, it burns up, it's fuel for something greater. And the something greater is the nothing that is everything. It is that space that we need to move into. And so the fire is the willingness for us to give up what is keeping us back and ignites the possibility of seeing so much more and in a world that is so much bigger.
Ram Dass tells a funny story about when he came back from India one time. And, once you experience this bliss of this kind of meditation, you just want it all the time. So he was driving on an expressway and he was singing, he was chanting one of the chants about Krishna. And this doesn't matter if you believe in Krishna or not, it was just a chant that he was doing. And the color that represents Krishna is blue. And so he's just chanting and singing and driving, and all of a sudden he sees a blue light behind him. He's going, "Oh, Krishna is here!" But then the police car pulls up beside him, and he pulls over to the side, and he's really just kind of blissed out from it. He's meditating while driving, and he asked the police officer asked if he knew how fast he was driving. And he said, "No, I have no idea." He says, "You were driving 20 miles an hour on the expressway." But anyway, he explained to the policeman that he'd just come back from India and that he was, meditating, quasi meditating. And he told him, "Don't meditate while you drive."
Yeah. You could when you do a speedy meditation, you tend to slow down. That's beautiful. Beautiful.
Anyway, but
Well, time is an illusion, and unfortunately, we don't always know that. So, we're talking about. We often think about time being 60 minutes when time, if you know you're doing something that you love, you can do it for hours and think it was 10 minutes. If you're doing something you hate, the first 10 minutes is about 3 hours.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so this whole thing, time and space are often boundaries that are artificial that we have created that we can overcome.
So part of this theme for this whole month is radical interconnection.
What makes it radical?
Well, because we don't think we're interconnected, and we are radically so.
Yeah, I think it's radical to think that we're actually connected often when we spend so much time believing in our independence and our separateness.
Mhm.
And so I believe that because we believe in separateness more than we believe in connectedness, that it's pretty radical to actually think whatever happens to you is also in some way happening to me. Whatever happens out there is happening in here, as above,
Mhm.
so below. And so I think it's radical, but it's a necessary radical to give some attention to when we start noticing that everything outside in some way is influencing our insides, who we are. When it gets very cloudy and you see the clouds, they're outside, in our case, behind tempered glass, and it still is happening inside. That
Mhm.
is, it has an effect on our inner being. And so to suddenly realize that we're not just connected to each other, but we're connected to everything that is happening is actually pretty radical.
Yeah, and if we were to act more like that, instead of thinking, well, I'm separate from the other, that means I don't have to be nice to them, acknowledge them, whatever. I can ignore them. They're not they're not my tribe or my family. And yet the truth is we are the human family. And if we all acted that way, what a different world this would be.
I was thinking now, a random thought. I met somebody recently outdoors at a restaurant who was pretty abrupt and pretty unpleasant. And I have a tendency, if I don't work with it, to be sarcastic or to say something that isn't pleasant back. And it suddenly hit me, what if when you die, that's the first person you meet on the other side?
And it
And
might be.
yeah, and I thought, there's no room for sarcasm here. I'll just be pleasant. So I was pleasant, and much to my surprise, the person very quickly shifted from his unpleasantness to a smile. And I realized that a lot of how other people appear also has to do with how they appear to me. That is who they are being, in some ways influenced by the way I'm being. And I often think of myself as an observer rather than a participant. And I think for those of us that think we're observers in this thing called life, we're actually participants even when we don't know it.
Right. And sarcasm can be seen as a harmless bit of
Well, it is
just
whenever I use it.
expressing a discontent. In fact, I love understanding word origins. And the origin of sarcasm is to tear flesh,
Mhm.
to tear flesh. So
You didn't have to bring that up publicly.
it's not.
I knew that. Yeah, unfortunately. It's to tear flesh and be able, I didn't do that. I was just kidding. No, it's aggressive, there's no doubt about it. And what I know about myself, and I think it's true for some of us, is that when we're pushed or pressed into a negative situation, if we're not careful, our first response can be aggressive.
Of course.
And aggressive can be passive aggressive or it can be aggressive, but it's defensive. And it comes again from I'm not enough to be able to sustain myself or my existence unless I do something. I love what Cat Stevens said in one of his songs, the album called Numbers. He says, and the song is Just Zero. And he says, I'm just a zero. Whatever you think of me, I'm really quite a bit less. When that's your posture, you can't be offended, you can't be hurt.
So with this idea of radical interconnection, that also means we're connected with all of life on Earth, all the animals, um, even the ones we don't like, the bugs and whatnot. We're all connected. We're connected with the trees, with all life forms. And I think most of us in this teaching honor life forms and honor life, honor the trees and the greenery. And yet, what if we all really believe that we're all connected? We're all connected with each other, this whole thing called life.
So we have to create a space in which there's enough emptiness of ego and emptiness of fear and worry and not enoughness to connect.
Mm.
I'm reminded of a video I saw recently, which is really beautiful. A bobcat, and bobcats are not known to be friendly either towards people or anybody else or anything else. They're typically, the cat mentality is I'm on my own, I'm by myself, I don't need you. And for most or many cats, and bobcats certainly, bobcat was caught in a trap,
Mm.
and he fought to not get untrapped because he thought the person untrapping him was going to harm him. But he untrapped him, and the bobcat ran away, and that was the end of the story. Except 2 days later, the bobcat shows up at his house at the door to greet him, and he greets the bobcat and gives him some food. Next, the bobcat comes in the house, makes friends with their cat, spends his time acting like a cat, goes back out, and then has babies and then brings the babies to him. This is a full adult bobcat. Uh, Nothing was lost on what this man did for the cat. If a bobcat can be that appreciative, I suspect human beings have the capacity to be that appreciative also.
Yeah.
So there's just endless numbers of stories where that kind of thing happens, and what it says is that we can be nice to either other species. Species can relate to us. Aliens from other planets may also be able to do that if we're willing to have them be something other than an enemy. We often approach people and conditions as if They're adversaries until they prove otherwise, rather than they're friends we haven't met yet.
Right. Yeah. What if we viewed them as interconnected
Yeah, yeah.
with
What if
us?
we
Yeah.
look for the good? I saw, speaking of videos, a Labrador retriever and a baby out by the pool. And the baby was crawling toward the edge of the pool and crawling further toward the edge of the pool, and then stood up, tried to reach into the pool. Clearly, the baby was going to fall into the pool. The Labrador grabbed him by the back of his neck or shirt, pulled him, and then wrapped his legs around him and walked him away from the pool. Okay, so if a lab can save a baby who doesn't even know that the dog exists, really, why can't we save each other? Why can't we be at least as nice and keep each other from drowning? And I think there's a tendency, not me, not my problem, I didn't do it. And to say we are connected. And the depth of our interconnectedness is so much richer than I think we've often thought. And that's really, really important.
It is. And so we invite you and all of us, remind all of us, because it seems like with meditation, we know how important it is, and it is the easiest thing in the world to put off.
Yeah.
So we invite you and ourselves to remember to do this on a daily basis, to connect with all that is
Yeah,
with
so
you.
maybe you can, if you don't meditate, you could view meditation as a practice that requires discipline and time and effort and intention and attention. And then you can just let it all go, because what will happen is it will unfold a world for you that is greater than any of the effort that you put into mastering all of these different skills. And so meditating is really about the experience that is open to you, not about how good you are at it or having it done it right.
Rob tends to meditate at night when he goes to sleep. I don't do that.
And in the morning
I
before I
would
get
go
up.
to sleep.
Yeah.
My best time is in the morning when I wake up early and everything is quiet. So find the right time to feel that interconnectedness of all of life, to feel the empowerment of God in you, because that's where you find it.
If every night when you go to bed, God gives you a hug, you're going to get a better night's sleep and wake up in the morning feeling a lot more alive than if you don't feel you qualify for it or don't know how to make that connection. So here's where we go to, did you open up the other? You did indeed. We're going to go to share. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, because most of you already know that we do this, let's just drag this down. That perfect. In order for us to sustain this ministry online, Zoom, there are expenses, and those expenses actually we found out run a few $1,000s, that more than I even realized, insurance and all of that. So your support of our ministry really does help and make a difference. But more than that, your support of our ministry also means that people that do not have the wherewithal, the abilities to take care of themselves like they'd like to, who join us, can also benefit. And so you are not just taking care of your spirituality by supporting us or supporting your spirituality through us, you're supporting other people being enriched also. So in advance, thank you. For those of you that are joining us, we say together
An
something, an
affirmation.
affirmation that we think really is true. This is not a money grab. This is a true affirmation. My
My
investment
investment
today
today
is made
made with
with
the
the full
full
realization
realization that
that God
God is
is the
the
source
source
of
of
my
my supply
supply and
and returns
returns it
it
to
to
me
me
enriched
enriched
and
and
multiplied.
multiplied.
And it doesn't just have to do with money.
So it is.
Okay, so stop share. There you go. And we're going to end the recording here.